That's Rod Serling introducing an episode of The Twilight Zone more than half a century ago. Starting tomorrow, the show is back in an all-new series on CBS All Access.
In 1964, an episode of The Twilight Zone vanished completely from the airwaves after a single broadcast. For over half a century, it was regarded as a ghost in cinematic history, banned from circulation on every platform from local stations to DVD. This episode contained no alien monsters or nuclear disasters. It was deemed too dangerous for the public to see. After 55 years buried in the shadows of censorship, Rod Serling's most chilling secret has finally come to light. Step into a dimension of hidden truth where history and fear collide. In May 1964, American audiences sat before their television sets to watch a familiar episode of The Twilight Zone, unaware they were about to witness one of the most controversial moments in television history. The episode, titled The Encounter, opens in a cramped, dusty, and haunting space. The attic of Fenton, a veteran who fought in the Pacific. Fenton, played by actor Neville Brand, is portrayed as a man surrounded by unpleasant memories and the loneliness of a social outcast. Facing him is Arthur Takamori, a young Japanese-American man played by George Takei who arrives solely to find a simple part-time job. The appearance of an old object immediately alters the entire atmosphere of the meeting. It is a samurai sword, a memento Fenton has kept for years since leaving the battlefield. As Arthur picks up the sword, he notices ancient characters intricately carved into the cold steel. Fenton begins to recount the origins of this object in a tone both proud and unstable. According to the veteran, the sword belonged to an enemy soldier who was no longer able to defend himself, and he took it as a trophy after a decisive action during the war. Fenton describes this act as an inevitable part of the conflict. Deep within the character's eyes, the viewer perceives an invisible torment. Neville Brand himself was a highly decorated soldier in World War II, and he once shared his empathy for the character. It wasn't just a role, it was a reflection of wounds that sometimes even time cannot fade. The story takes a darker turn when the two men become trapped inside the attic because the door unexpectedly locks from the outside. In the suffocating and sweltering space, barriers of culture and self-respect begin to break down. Under the influence of negative emotions, Fenton starts to make prejudiced judgments about Arthur's heritage. Arthur, in return, loses his initial composure. He admits his father was involved in providing information to Japanese forces during the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. Arthur confesses the family burden. "I carry the name of a man who betrayed the very place where I live, and this sword seems to be reminding me of that." This shocking revelation touched the direct pain of thousands of Japanese-American families at the time. The New York Times later looked back on the event, noting that the episode dared to expose corners of American society that the public was not ready to face. The confrontation between the two men is not merely a clash between individuals, but a conflict between two generations bearing the scars of history. The episode ends in a quiet, devastating scene of loss, leaving the audience with a sense of shock and emptiness. Rod Serling, the show's creator, adamantly defended his message, knowing it would cause a storm. He once told the press, "Our purpose is to illuminate the prejudices deep within the human mind, even when it makes us feel offended." The combination of George Takei's powerful performance and Martin Goldsmith's sharp script created a prophetic work of art. These authentic and raw dialogues became the excuse for outside forces to intervene in the episode's existence. The public reaction following that broadcast was stronger than anyone could have anticipated. What unfolded on screen accidentally struck a sensitive nerve within an American society already rife with racial tensions. A wave of boycotts. On the morning of May 2nd, 1964, CBS headquarters in New York was flooded with angry calls and complaints from across the country. The public response escalated beyond simple discomfort into a full-blown media crisis. The most vocal critic was the Japanese American Citizens League, a prestigious organization protecting the rights of the Asian community. They argued that Martin Goldsmith's script spread a false and toxic narrative by having Arthur admit his father aided the 1941 attack. For a community that had endured the cruel imprisonment of internment camps solely because of their race, this plot point felt like a betrayal of 2 decades of efforts to clear their name. Those involved began to feel the heat of public opinion as the show's main sponsors expressed concern about their brand image being tied to divisive content. George Takei, who poured his heart into the role of Arthur, later shared his shock at the community's fierce reaction. "We made the episode with the goal of exposing the harm of prejudice. But ironically, the very plot points built to create empathy were misunderstood as a confirmation of baseless accusations." This sensitivity stemmed from the fact that in 1964, the truth, that not a single Japanese-American citizen was ever convicted of espionage during the war, was not widely known. The episode accidentally reopened an unhealed wound, causing Japanese Americans to feel their loyalty was once again being questioned. Pressure came not only from social organizations, but also from the internal censorship systems of local television stations. Several station managers in areas with large Asian populations refused to rebroadcast the episode for fear of protests and disorder. Critics also targeted the depiction of Fenton as a paranoid man who appeared as a victim, creating an imbalance in the delivery of the humanistic message. The New York Times, in a deep analysis, pointed out that American television at the time was not mature enough to handle such a complex subject without causing psychological harm to minority groups. Observers noted that the pairing of a guilt-ridden veteran and a young man carrying a family burden created a chemical reaction too strong for the entertainment standards of that era. Rod Serling stood in the eye of the storm, realizing his efforts to protect creative freedom were hitting a solid wall of business rules. He tried to explain that the core message was about the destruction caused by hatred. His justifications were drowned out by aggressive demands to withdraw the episode. A member of the production team once revealed that the atmosphere in the office in the following weeks was extremely tense, as they faced demands for explanations from management. They understood that in the world of commercial television, when audience opposition reaches a certain threshold, artistic value must give way to systemic stability. The concern of CBS executives finally transformed into a decisive action to extinguish the spreading fire of public opinion. The final decision was made quietly and thoroughly, marking a sad milestone in the careers of the creators: the censorship death sentence. Following the heated controversies in the summer of 1964, CBS leadership made a purging decision. The encounter was officially pulled from all broadcast schedules and never appeared in the list of rebroadcast episodes. This was not a temporary ban, but a systematic effort to completely erase the presence of this work from mainstream media. Throughout the following decades, as the Twilight Zone became a global cultural icon shown on hundreds of international channels, the episode about the attic and the samurai sword remained silent in sealed film cans. Copyright packages provided to local stations or other countries were strictly required by the central station to exclude this episode to avoid any legal or diplomatic trouble. Rod Serling, who always valued the use of television as a tool for moral education, tasted the helplessness of a creator stripped of his voice. He understood that self-censorship had become a survival skill in an entertainment industry full of unspoken rules about political safety. In a speech regarding the responsibility of a screenwriter, he exclaimed bitterly, "We are allowed to write about everything, as long as it doesn't touch the pockets of the sponsors or shake the crowd's false belief in a spotless past." The disappearance of the encounter created a strange void in Serling's legacy, turning it into a secret whispered between film researchers and loyal fans. Subsequent generations of viewers only knew of its existence through brief notes in old television almanacs. The strictness of this ban extended to the home video market, which began to flourish in the 1980s and 1990s. When complete DVD collections of The Twilight Zone were released, buyers frequently noticed the absence of episode number 151 without receiving any satisfactory explanation from the producer. The New York Times once likened the episode to a rejected child of American cinema. a work punished not for low artistic quality, but for its excessive honesty. Being removed from official distribution channels turned the episode into a rare commodity in the black market, where blurry bootleg recordings from VHS tapes were traded among collectors with a mix of curiosity and fear regarding content deemed dangerous. The pressure of silence weighed not only on the work but also on the artists who helped create it. George Takei had to wait nearly half a century to discuss the meaning of this role publicly, without fear of being misunderstood as inciting racial hatred. He and his colleagues understood that during that period, challenging a network's censorship decisions could lead to a permanent end to one's career. The original film prints of the encounter were kept in CBS vaults, with labels clearly stating they were not to be copied or screened, turning them into a piece of frozen history. As time passed, the controversies surrounding the episode faded, but public curiosity began to reignite thanks to the development of the internet and movements demanding historical transparency. The first cracks in the wall of censorship appeared when cultural researchers began to demand the preservation and restoration of the value of forgotten works. The light of justice and public understanding prepared for a spectacular return of a work once considered a historical failure. Truth awakens. After more than half a century lying dormant in the suffocating darkness of television archives, the solid wall of censorship surrounding the encounter finally began to show irreparable cracks. This change did not occur in a vacuum. It was the result of a profound shift in American society's collective consciousness regarding its own difficult past. A pivotal moment in this journey was the signing of the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which marked the federal government's official apology and restitution to Japanese Americans who had been unjustly imprisoned during World War II. As the nation began to confront the ghosts of its wartime hysteria, the atmosphere that had once branded Rod Serling's work as dangerous started to dissipate. By 2016, a landmark decision was reached. The Sci-Fi Channel announced it would unseal the vaults and rebroadcast the episode during its annual New Year's Day marathon, ending 52 years of absolute prohibition. This was not merely a programming choice. It was a symbolic act of liberation, confirming that modern society had finally matured enough to face the very scars it had spent decades trying to hide. The return of the episode caused a significant shockwave among film historians, cultural researchers, and a new generation of audiences who had only known the story as a myth. As the flickering lights from Fenton's attic once again illuminated television screens across the country, viewers no longer saw a piece of racial propaganda. Instead, they witnessed a powerful, haunting indictment of the lingering destruction of war and the invisible prejudices that poison the human soul. The New York Times, in an extensive commentary on the broadcast, observed that the episode had not aged into irrelevance. On the contrary, it offered a chillingly prophetic look at how fear and isolation can transform ordinary neighbors into sworn enemies. George Takei, who had transitioned from a young actor to a global icon of civil rights, expressed deep emotion at seeing his work returned to its rightful place. We have waited far too long for the world to understand that acknowledging the dark corners of our history is the essential first step toward ensuring we never repeat those tragic mistakes again. The public reception in the 21st century was a world away from the reactionary climate of 1964. Instead of the vitriol and boycotts of the past, contemporary audiences viewed the work with a sense of profound admiration for Rod Serling's forward-thinking vision. Many viewers noted that Arthur's confession regarding his father's past was not an insult to a community, but rather a heartbreaking metaphor for the inherited shame and trauma that subsequent generations are often forced to carry. Cultural experts have since pointed out that the 2016 revival served as a necessary act of atonement for a period where creative freedom was stifled by corporate anxiety over revenue and public image. Today, the encounter is no longer a lost relic. It is a cornerstone of media studies, cited as a primary example of how art can be distorted and silenced under the weight of political censorship. The mysteries of the samurai sword and the suffocating attic have moved from the black market of bootleg VHS tapes to the respectable halls of academic discussion. proving that the light of truth can eventually clear the path for even the most dangerous of masterpieces. This restoration ensures that the true stature of the man behind the legendary series is fully understood, preparing a solid foundation for his eternal legacy. The legacy of Rod Serling. More than 6 decades since the debut of The Twilight Zone, Rod Serling's vision remains as a lighthouse in the heart of popular culture, and the restoration of The Encounter is the final piece completing the portrait of an artist who never surrendered. Today, this once-rejected episode has become an essential part of film curricula, recognized as one of the boldest experiments in human behavioral psychology. The messages Serling sent through the confrontation in the attic have transcended the boundaries of entertainment, becoming an eternal warning about the cruelty of prejudice and the destructive power of hatred. Contemporary filmmakers looking back at this legacy admit that without Serling's courage to face society's dark corners, today's horror and fantasy cinema would lack a necessary humanistic depth. The revival of the work has paved the way for ambitious new projects, where Serling's spirit is carried forward by generations of artists daring to tackle thorny subjects. Director Jordan Peele, upon embarking on the 2019 reimagining of The Twilight Zone, affirmed that his greatest mission was to keep Serling's original flame alive. Real art is not just to be admired for its aesthetic. It must possess the inherent ability to make us feel deeply uncomfortable, for it is in that discomfort that we awaken our most human parts. Even as we move through 2026, the influence of Serling remains palpable in everything from the sharp psychological narratives of modern television to the upcoming feature-length cinematic projects currently in development. The New York Times recently noted in a retrospective analysis that his true legacy is not found in the numerous awards he collected, but in the radical bravery he displayed by turning every script into a mirror that forced society to examine its own structural holes and moral failings. George Takei, a man who traveled a long and difficult path with this episode, from the days of its initial stigma to its eventual standing as a historical masterpiece, frequently invokes the words of Serling as a sacred guide for the necessity of free speech. Imagination has no limits, but the storyteller's ultimate responsibility is to lead that imagination toward the light of truth. These immortal quotes are no longer merely lines found in a screenplay. They are now engraved upon memorials and cited in legal defenses honoring those artists who have fought against the chilling effects of censorship. The final, formal recognition of The Encounter as a masterpiece has effectively vindicated the devoted life of Serling, a man who fought for the artist's right to speak the truth, even when the microphones were being turned off. His values have proven that although the political climate and technology may change, the primal fear of the other remains a constant human struggle, and we will always require the dimensions he created to learn how to thou-hu and respect one another. Rod Serling passed into eternity many years ago. His warm, distinctive voice and steady, piercing gaze continue to echo through the dusty attics and hidden corners of the collective soul, where the truth still waits for those brave enough to seek it. If you found today's journey into the historical shadows of the Twilight Zone insightful, please like and share this video to help spread these true artistic values to a wider audience. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming explorations into the most fascinating and enduring mysteries of cinematic history.